Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to move the motion in Councillor Yip and myself's names. Our motion, as submitted recently and published last week, called on the Council to back a national inquiry into grooming and rape gangs in this country that terrorise innocent children. You can see from the wording in the motion, we deliberately chose not to be party political in the wording. And in our comments to the press, we were equally clear in our hopes that all parties could support this motion today. When the news broke at the weekend that the government had U-turned and would now agree to an inquiry, that was welcome news. Therefore, in light of this, I welcome the amendment from Councillor Moore and Welch in reflecting the developments in the last week. Likewise from Councillor Jan and Baz's amendment, recognising the need for quick action. And would ask the Labour amendment to just correct a factual error in it. It says that the previous government did not commit to implementing the recommendations. The BBC have actually reported that they did. They've also reported that the Labour Party refused to give any timetable for implementing the J report earlier this year, and that part of the reason for the delay was the general election. Now, if that was to change to say that action wasn't quick enough, we would agree. There is no pretending that but there should be no pretending that the commitment was not there. I'd also just highlight that while we recognise the Council tackling exploitation plan that is referenced in here, that says in that report, those identified as vulnerable being sexually exploited is decreasing. The Casey report is clear on page 8 that there is a serious flaw in local authority data claiming CSE and exploitation is falling in children's services, despite the fact it has been rising in the reports to the police. And it is that kind of pretending that something that we're doing already is sufficient, which will not protect children going forward. Personally, I don't think any party has done enough, and frankly, who could any of us when we consider that these hideous crimes are still happening? The need for a national inquiry, therefore, could not be clearer. The victims of these gangs have been failed, and none of us can truly stand here and say for sure these crimes are not still taking place in our city and in our country. That is why a national inquiry is so desperately needed. A national inquiry is also important because it's become clear that the British state, whether in individuals working for the state or by policy choices, has helped to enable these horrific crimes and have failed to protect the very innocent children that the state is meant to protect. None of us here can think it's acceptable for that to be allowed to continue, and all of those involved must be brought to account. There can be no brushing under the carpet. While the focus nationally has so often been on other places in the country, such as Rotherham or Oldham, or other places in the region, such as Telford, we must not pretend Birmingham is immune to these crimes. During the course of this year, GB News journalists published a map of evidence that had been able to pull together from across the country that mentioned Birmingham. Birmingham has been mentioned in documentaries about grooming gangs, and a brave victim interviewed on Newsnight recently, when asked about how many men had sexually abused her, said, "So when I lived in Telford, there was about 24, and then they passed me to another gang in Birmingham, and it went on to roughly about 70, 73 when I was in Birmingham." Local inquiries were never going to be enough. There is over 50 towns where incidents are known of, and likely hundreds more where they're yet to be uncovered. Indeed, in Birmingham, when brave City Council officers tried to name the men subject to anti-grooming orders to try and protect a vulnerable female victim, West Midlands Police objected, saying that the men would then become a risk of being targets of far-right vigilante attacks. And it took a court ruling that there was no basis for that claim of the police to allow the council to be able to protect that person. The Telegraph reported earlier this year how in Telford the police and council described parts of the town as no-go areas and seemingly turned a blind eye, going on to say that when the council there became aware that taxi drivers were offering children's rides for sex, it suspended the licensing enforcement for drivers, leaving those people driving around their area. Children as young as 10, plied with drugs and alcohol to be gang raped. They were totally failed by the state. Cases have gone to court that have revealed claims of officers, police, and even elected representatives having ignored victims, enabled abuse, or worse, been involved directly. The J report inquiry recommendations must be immediately introduced. A national inquiry must happen and not be delayed, and that inquiry must have the power to find every perpetrator and enabler and ensure they are caught, punished, and ensure the protection of children in our country going forward. It is welcome that the Casey report has been published, but people must not think that that is the end of it. The report in itself does little if it is not acted on fully and without any obstacles being placed in its way. And to anyone who thinks this is only a historic issue, I'd direct you to page 6 of the Cllr report, where it shows around 500,000 children a year are likely to experience child sexual abuse of any kind. Police recorded crime data shows just over 100,000 offences of child sexual abuse and exploitation recorded last year, with around 60% of those being contact offences. And of those contact offences, an estimated 17,000 are flagged by the police as child sexual exploitation in the recorded crime data, and identified around 700 recorded offence of group-based child sexual exploitation in 2023. And the report importantly goes on to say, given how underreported CSE is, the flaws in the data collection and the confusing and inconsistently applied definitions, it is highly unlikely that that accurately reflects the true scale of child sexual exploitation or group-based exploitation. It is a failure of public policy over many years that there remains such limited, reliable data in this area. I urge members to back the amendments from Councillor Moore and Welch and Councillor Janan Baz, and ask the Labour members to change their amendment to reflect that the J report should have been implemented quicker, not that it wasn't committed to. And I'd ask the Chamber unites today to send a strong message that we fully support a national inquiry, that much, much more needs to be done, and there are actions highlighted in Councillor Welch's and Moore's amendment that the Council can do right now to support the pace of work needed and to ensure that these horrific crimes are stopped once and for all.